Hi, my name is Cameron Ford, and I'm a field technologist with Omnissa. Welcome to part 4 of our Getting Started with Intelligence for Horizon series. In this episode, we're going to be covering how to go about building a dashboard using the tips and tools that we discussed in the previous video. So just as a reminder, part 1 was covering where to find the data. So thinking about where intelligence is storing different types of Horizon data. Part 2 looked into overall how do we use the widgets, how do we customize them, what is some of the functionality of the widgets, how do they work and operate. And then in part 3, we then looked at overall dashboard design, so how to go about creating a good layout for a dashboard, as well as what types of contents and how it should have an overall flow. So to get started, we're going to create a new dashboard. And since we're using our imagination for this one, I'm going to create a dashboard focused on Horizon session performance. So I'm going to give it that title. Save. And I'm going to add my first widget. So most of the data that we're going to be looking at is going to be in the Horizon session table. So this particular table contains most of the information that we will be using to build out our widgets. So from a dashboard design perspective, we're going to be covering client connectivity up top, and then we'll kind of allow the dashboard to flow to the bottom where we're building out use cases for desktop performance, as well as getting into grouping desktop performance by various pools and RDS farms. So for the first widget, we want to look at client connectivity. And to do so, I'm going to pull in protocol latency. So I'll give it title protocol latency. And this is where we're going to choose what type of graph that we want. So given that this is going to be a high-level dashboard, I'm just going to use a line chart so that we can actually trim protocol latency over time. And for the metric that I want to trim, we could trim max or average. Just given that we want to figure out, is latency really changing over time for our users? I'm going to choose to use average for this particular widget. So to get to the metric that I want, I'll type in protocol to see what options that I have. And I'll notice that protocol latency and packet loss are options. So I'll pick protocol latency and allow that line chart to load to see if my graph is working properly. Additional controls that I have is I can also look at grouping it by something. So we're not going to do any group by at the moment. For right now, this is going to be just overall averaging of the environment and determining is that average significantly moving up or down. And then in terms of date range, I can choose to use a smaller range. Right now it's looking at the last 28 days. But if you want to make it shorter, it could be 7 days, or if you want to do it for the last day, you certainly have those options as well. For my chart, let's see, what do I want to use? I will probably stick with the 28 days data. So that way I have a good insight is, the last 30 days, give or take, is our moving average for overall latency, is it changing? I'll click save, and that will add my chart to the widget. Now, in addition to latency, something else that I'm going to want to know is what makes up that latency. So typically there's going to be various segments of the user's connectivity. Some of it will be WAN, some of it will be LAN or Wi-Fi, depending on how they're coming into your service. If they're all local, then it's going to be LAN. If they're coming in from the outside, of course, WAN. And whether or not they're using Wi-Fi is going to be purely dependent on how they access the network from their environment. So the next widget I'm going to add is I'm going to basically do the exact same thing. It's going to be a Horizon session widget. And for this one though, I want to look at just WAN connectivity. So here we got average WAN DNS response time. Actually, I don't want to do a count. I do want to do average. I'll go back to WAN. And I'll click DNS response time. And I'm going to do another line chart for now. Again, I can change these charts later if I want to change the visualization. Sometimes you have to play around with that. And again, we're going to call this average WAN latency. And then click save. So the next thing you'll notice is that the widget was simply added to the dashboard, but I might not like the location. So This is something you can play around with in terms of figuring out what's the exact flow that you want to implement. But to change the layout, this is where we're going to hit Customize. And for this example, I'm going to drag the average win latency up. I'm going to make the box a little smaller. And then that way I have room to put in some additional widgets that I may want to add. So I want to save the dashboard layout, yes. And then now I'm basically comparing how the average WAN latency changes over time compared to protocol latency. Additional information that might be useful is maybe I want to know Wi-Fi signal strength, or maybe just look at LAN latency. Okay, so for this widget, we're going to look at adding Wi-Fi signal strength. So we'll type in Wi-Fi, we'll get Wi-Fi signal strength, we'll do the average over time, again, last 28 days. And, don't want a vertical chart, want a line chart. And we need to give it a name. Let's be average Wi-Fi signal strength. Spell correctly. Okay, so now we'll have to hit Customize. We'll move the box up. Look at shrinking this down again. All right, so far what this is basically doing is it's giving us insight into, one, how well users are connected from the entire round trip between their client and the desktop running in the data center compared to the overall average WAN latency and average Wi-Fi signal strength. So usually what I would be looking for up here is, are there any significant increases in WAN latency that could potentially be contributing to protocol? Overall, the average WAN latency seems to be around 50 milliseconds or below. So that's pretty good. I don't see any crazy trends here. And then Wi-Fi signal strength, we'll see this varies the most, but it kind of goes from -2 dB all the way up to -50. So again, there are definitely significant times when Wi-Fi signal strength has very low signal quality that could be impacting user connectivity. For our next example, we're going to be adding a widget that looks at doing a client breakdown by OS type. So to do that, we're going to go back to the Horizon session table. In this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to count the number of sessions that are using various clients by OS type. So to do that, one, I'm going to do a distinct count on session IDs. That should give me a unique count of sessions for every given time interval. And then we're going to group it by client, let's see, client type normalized. Okay, that should be the right type. And the way to validate that is when the chart loads, just mouse over and make sure that it's actually showing you the information that you're looking for. Okay, so that's the information we're looking for, and this we're going to call this sessions by client OS, and click save. All right, and then if I customize this, I can drag it out a little bit. Okay, now that we have our widget added, now we can see that the sessions by client OS is now listed, and we basically can trend day by day the number of types of clients that have connected into the environment. In this environment, you can see primarily it's Windows, a mixture of Mac, some iOS, HTML access, and Horizon Client for Chrome. For our next example, we're going to move on to looking at desktop performance metrics. So let's look at adding widgets regarding CPU, memory, and disk performance. And for this one, we're going to switch tables from the Horizon session table that we were using, and we're going to be using the intelligence tables. So for this one, we're choosing the Horizon session experience score table because that has data specifically related to how we are scoring the various desktop performance categories. Now we could use the raw data in the session table, but instead of doing that, we really just want to trend the number of good versus bad CPU scores, memory, and disk scores over time so that we have a much simpler view of how well things are working. So to do that, here we're going to look at doing another count of sessions by ID. And again, we can do a distinct count just to make sure they're all unique. And now we're going to group them by CPU consumption score. So we'll let this update, and I actually want to change this back to a line chart. Now what's happening is now it's going to present a line per category. So in this case, because basically all of our CPU scores are good except for one poor score, it's going to show us 2 lines. Now if we had another score for neutral, then an additional line would be displayed for that, but since it's basically just good and poor at the moment, those are the only 2 lines available. Now we're going to give our widget a name. We're going to call it CPU performance scores, and we'll click save to add that to our dashboard. That's going to load. And again, I'm going to customize the dashboard to change the format just a little bit. I like making the widgets a little bit smaller. Obviously this is purely optional. Click save. And there. So sizing the widgets, that's something you can play around with. Sometimes if you make them too small, definitely makes it hard to read. So you can make them larger or bigger depending on how the data is being presented. Now in addition to CPU, we also care about memory and disk performance. So I'm going to add widgets in those regards. So again, we're going to go back to intelligence, session experience score. We're going to do a distinct count of session IDs. Let's see. There we go. And we're going to group it by memory consumption score normalized. And I'm going to switch that back to a line chart. And there we have it. So all the memory scores are good. So again, we only expect 1 line to show up, and that's working as normal. So now let's name the widget memory performance score. You can use experience versus performance, whatever naming convention makes sense to you. And then again, just kind of confirm that the widget has appeared, and it has. And we will want to hit customize to move it in place. There we go. And I'll click save. Now the other category that we mentioned is disk performance. So for that one, I want to add disk latency. So again, go back to intelligence, session experience score, distinct count of session IDs, group by disk, latency scoring normalized, and we'll make that one a line chart as well. Disk performance score. Then we'll customize it, move it up. And again, we can get creative. We can make this one fully wide. This is again where you get to kind of play around with the format to see what visually looks good for you, and is it telling you the information that you're looking for. So again, showing the multiple examples, having a nice wider chart versus a narrower chart definitely kind of changes the functionality. Now we don't just have to use line charts, right? So there are other types of widgets that are available. So if we just want to count the number of users that are having poor disk performance scores, we can do that. But again, by having the line, it allows us to trend them over time, and then we just kind of determine are there any users that meet that criteria. And here we can see, yes, there was 1 user with poor disk performance. Okay, so in addition to doing it by average overall, again, this is looking at trends of scores over time, we can also use the group by functionality to make it more targeted to specific pools. So let's look at an example of that. So let's look at adding a widget where, let's see, it's going to be the session experience score. And instead of counting session IDs, in this case, we're going to count the number of pools by name. We're going to do a distinct count, so we'll make sure we're only counting pool once. And then we're going to group it by CPU consumption score. And so we can read it better, we're going to make it a little bit smaller time frame. Okay. And again, this is going to be pulls by CPU score. And we're going to click Save. Customize. Alright, it's already in the right location. Let's hit save again. And we'll go review the data. Okay, so now that we have pulls by CPU score, this should basically be showing us any pulls that have both good and neutral or poor scores. Now, we can also change this to make it more targeted. So let's show an example of that. So maybe we don't want to just see everything that's good. Maybe we only want to see pulls that have a poor score. So this should simply click includes, make sure it says poor. And when it filters, this is going to say no data available because nothing matches. But let's go back 14 days and see that, oh, so we had 2 pulls. Back on the 22nd that had poor CPU scores. So again, multiple examples using the exact same widget, and you can kind of filter if you're getting too much information or not enough information. So since I don't want my widgets to be blank, I'm going to get rid of my filter for now, but just showing a quick example of how you could filter it to make it a little bit more targeted. Okay, because in larger environments, right, so if you have pools that are having specific issues, if you do filter on just things that are bad, it's going to show you the pools that have the bad data, and then you can target them for additional analysis. All right, so quickly walk through the exact same examples, showing how to add it in for disk performance as well. Let's see, session experience score. Again, we want to count the number of pools. Stink count, group it by disk, latency scoring, 14 days, pool, disk performance score. And then, added it to the bottom. So I'll hit customize. Over, and there we go. So again, just a quick way to add in the pool performance scores, do it by pool, and you could also do it by site. So if you're just trying to figure out, does one Horizon pod or site have a different performance than another one, you can use the grouping mechanism to kind of change the widgets to show the information that you want. And then finally, we'll add one for memory. Intelligence, session experience, counting pools, a name, making it a distinct count, grouping by memory, consumption score, 14 days, memory performance scores. Okay. And that basically completes our dashboard. Now we have, actually, I click customize, double check it one more time. Oh, yep, didn't put where I wanted it. And again, these are sample examples that you can go through. And please try to recreate these on your own. And again, this could be customized from here. So there might be different metrics or data points that you want, things that you are missing that we're not providing. All of the data is there around the Horizon environment that you will want to create reports and dashboards on. And again, this is just an example of how you would go about doing it, how to use the grouping functionality, the widget functionality to kind of filter down and get the data to show exactly what you're looking for. And hopefully this has been a good example to get you started in building your own Horizon custom dashboards. Thank you for watching our 4-part series, and please leave us some feedback on content we can leave or create for the future. Thank you.